And looking at our local yellow dwarf here in 193 angstroms, we are talking about some space weather. There's some incoming coronal hole wind stream going on. We're about to go into a geomagnetic storm. Otherwise, solar activity very low, no sunspots. Small active region rising here in the east, just to the south of the equator. Something to keep an eye on. Otherwise, when I say ion, the pun is intentional. We also do see a small coronal mass ejection. Let's take a look. And here's the view from the coronagraph at stereo A. You see a sudden break in the corona there at the same time as a little bit of ejecta is headed down the pike. So right in this area, you see this diffuse, relatively small coronal mass ejection. We'll look at the coronagraph in a minute. But first, more views of the sun. Let that play through one more time for you. This occurring last night at about 1600 UTC. And looking at the colorized magnetogram here, we see some areas of magnetic organization kicking off. Let's do a little zoom in here. You can see some spots here just north of the equator. A little bit of magnetic activity happening. So the sun may not be as blank as it appears. Although solar minimum conditions are still in effect. Again, geomagnetic storm coming tonight into tomorrow. Before we move on to more interesting stuff, let's talk about more Gwyneth Paltrow quotes. Now, if you watched our video from yesterday afternoon, Censored versus Sinkhole, you would have seen a Gwyneth quote about Harvey Weinstein letting her take in the Miramax jet if she's opening a supermarket for him. Well, here's another one. I'd rather smoke crack than eat cheese from a tin. I don't know what's so bad about cheese from a tin or what's so good about crack, but let's move on to supporting the channel. Please do so via Patreon, as it is our source of funding, not YouTube. The reason Google's showing you ads is because this channel is monetized for Google, not for us. So check out patreon.com/smAsho and help keep these videos coming out. 10.7 centimeter radial flux still at 67, down from yesterday's 68, and very close to this orange line that we've drawn in. That is the orange line of solar minimum. Next, we're going to look at Gong 2. Here's your Gong 2 data, the top view ecliptic plane field plot. Keep in mind this data is 2 hours and 11 minutes old. There's some magnetic activity happening on the far side of the sun there. And that is either an indication that the north solar polar field is strengthening or that there's some activity south of the pole. So we could be in an extended period of time here in the North Pole oriented portion of the current sheet depicted in green. Let's move on. Keep in mind this magnetic stuff can change with zero warning. X-ray flux still flatlined. We haven't even seen a B-class flare since July 7th. Here's the Enlil spiral, and you can see this ramp up in the anticipated solar wind velocity. And we are expecting a geomagnetic storm of a KP of 5 or possibly even a 6 over the next 48 hours. We could see some power grid failures. So there should be some interesting space weather to be covered on this channel in the next couple of days. And let's move on to more stuff. And here's the LASCO C3. We're going to check and see if we see any kind of a halo toward the end of this. And just rock that back and forth. Yep, there is a halo, indicating that that coronal mass ejection is Earth-facing once again. I'll bet you saw it on this channel first. Please leave a comment if you realize that we come up with this stuff days before everybody else. If you want to talk about a dry run, that's a dry run. And there's that coronal mass ejection one last time. And here's a real-time solar wind. We just saw an uptick here in the BT. That's the total B field of the sun. That's the one you live on, the interplanetary magnetic field. So the field just increased. The BZ, which is the red line in the top pane there, has converged toward the 0 line. That's a good sign as far as earthquake risk goes. Phi angle is at 346, so no coronal hole magnetic connection apparently going on there. Solar wind density sputtering all over the place, everywhere between 7.7 all the way down to about 1 proton per cubic centimeter, currently at around 4.3 protons per cubic centimeter. Look at this sudden uptick in the solar wind speed. So if that's a coronal hole wind stream, we're gonna probably see a very big increase in the solar wind speed when that density drops. So keep an eye on that throughout the day. Earthquake rundown, we saw an uptick in earthquakes. Let's do the list as quickly as possible here. 4.5 at Vanuatu, this one happening about 20 hours ago from when this video was shot. That one is at depth, which means the risk has not subsided. 4.8 at Japan is the next on the list. That one near the surface. Here's a 5.7 at Turkey. That one probably caused some damage. Let's take a look at the location. And that one's located in the northern reaches of the Marmara Sea. Please leave a comment if you are viewing the video from Istanbul or any place else that felt that relatively large quake. Probably caused some damage. And next on the list is Papua New Guinea, getting a 5.1. And that quake is fairly close to the surface. Here's an aftershock in Turkey, right in the same location. Here's a 4.8 in Spain. How is that Spain? It looks like it's off the coast of Africa. Let's see what they're talking about. I don't know why they're listing this as Spain. It looks like it's nowhere near a plate boundary. No, it's near the Canary Islands. That explains it. As the Canary Islands contain the high point of Spain. So that's Gran Canaria. So they are Spanish territories. And a ton of quakes on the list here, so let's get through the list. Next is the 4.4 in Nepal, followed by a 4.9 north of New Zealand. I think this is the largest quake of the past 24, a 6.1 at Argentina. We've been warning about Western South America for indeed months. As they keep seeing deep quakes, that's a deep quake also. 128.3 kilometers depth. So yeah, that does not exhaust the alert. The alert remains in effect for Western South America. 4.8 in China, 4.9 at the East Pacific Rise on the plate boundary. Here's a 5.1 at the Solomon Islands. Next is a 4.7 in India, 4.3 at Turkey, a 5.4 at Chile. Next we've got an Argentinian quake. That one is at depth also. Over 240 kilometers depth is the measurement of that one. 4.2 in Canada, nowhere near a plate boundary. Near Point Liard. Next on the list is a 4.5 at Japan, followed by a 5.2 at the Fiji Islands. That one near 100 kilometers depth. Followed by a 4.6 at Fiji at over 600 kilometers depth. That would be a nearly 6 magnitude quake if that occurred at the surface. Here's another deep quake at northwestern South America there at Peru. That one is also at depth. Heads up, folks. If you are in an earthquake-prone zone, have a plan. Plan to be an asset, not a liability in the event of a disaster. This is quite a list we've got here. There's 5.0 at Viscoy Island. 4.4 at East Timor at depth. 4.6 at Japan. 4.7 at Puerto Rico. 4.5 at Peru. And that's the last one on the list. That one coming in about 3 hours ago. And here's the pressure map, courtesy windy.com. Let this advance about 24 hours. Notice that huge high pressure ridge northwest of the US. That's going to be partially in charge of injecting blizzard conditions into the northwest US. Let's pause it there. There's where pressure systems will be in about 24 hours, at least from when this video was shot. Here's the volcano rundown. Shivaluch back on the list, exploding once again, producing a 28,000 foot ash plume. Please leave a comment if you've seen purple skies where you are located in the northern hemisphere. Due to multiple stratospheric volcanic aerosol injections. Mount Aso also on the list, 6,000 foot ash plume there. Karangatang back on the list, 8,000 foot plume there as it explodes. Dukono exploding, 7,000 foot plume there. Popocatépetl, 21,000 foot plume there as that explodes. Revenador exploding, 15,000 foot ash plume there. Sabancaya exploding, 24,000 foot ash plume there. And while volcanic ash is not identified in satellite imagery at Nevados de Chilean, please do not pole vault over the caldera there. It could be unfortunate for your well-being. Next, we'll play all three magnetosphere movies today as we see a perturbation in both the velocity and the density of the solar wind. So we'll let this play through. 4 hours of data, courtesy University of Michigan Geospace Model V1.5, part of the Space Modeling Framework. And there's the density. And you do see in the last 25% of the video there, you're going to see a density spike, which will show as a compression of the white areas. The white areas show up that the white areas are depicting low density and the dark blue areas are depicting high density. You're going to see a compression here. There's that compression happening. That's the increase in the solar wind velocity and the density at the same time. And the density actually just went down a little bit. Could be the indication of a sputtering coronal hole wind stream. And here you're going to see the spike in the pressure. Showing up as a double spike in the model. Let's play that again. This coming in at about 7:40 universal time. Again, there's that spike in the magnetosphere. Let's look at the ground magnetic perturbations, as they should be similarly affected. And here's the global current spike coming in around that same time. You see that happening. You see it goes through the whole planet. Spreads right across the African rift zone, coincidentally. I assume it's not a coincidence, since nothing appears to be a coincidence in our universe. Is it coincidence? Is it divine providence? Is it live? Or is it Memorex? By the way, we view the premieres live these days, as I'm not only smAsho, but I'm also a client. Yes, I watch the videos. Here's a GOES electron flux, and it looks like we're getting a little more electrons here. Nothing to write home about there. It looks like it's in a pretty smooth range and not super high. Here are the relativistic electrons, and they are in a nominal range also, and so we don't see any kind of charging hazards for your favorite satellites. Here's the F2 ionosphere, and we see some sudden charging happening there. All the way up to 14 megahertz, you can see depicted in a light gray color there for a fleeting moment. Let's look at the last image. From that, it looks like it's pretty discharged on the sun side and pretty charged on the night side. Moving on to where planets are located. And there's where things are in the solar system. Milky Way galaxy team for the win. Approaching a new moon, there's where things will be in 1 week. Do you know where stuff is above your head? Check out in-the-sky.com. I'm sorry, in-the-sky.org. And pick their all sky charts, put in your zip code, and you'll be able to see when things happen. Today's feature is Sirius, the dog star. I don't know why, no real reason. The brightest star? Are you aware that there's a blizzard about to wallop the northern U.S. with 3 feet of snow? There's the really vague map from AccuWeather.com indicating where it will be. All of western Montana is going to get snow, as well as a bunch of Idaho, northwestern Wyoming, and southern Canada there, Alberta area. Going to get pummeled. And it's not even October yet. Let's look at tropical tidbits to show you what it's going to be like on the morning of October 2nd. And there's the scenario. We're talking about over 20 inches of snow there in some portions of northwestern Montana, as well as northwestern Wyoming. Also, snow going to be falling in Washington and Oregon and Nevada and Utah. Are you prepared for a snowstorm, that blizzard that's happening not even in October? I mean, barely into just the beginning, the last of September. Are you prepared? By the way, AccuWeather is already coming out with power outage warnings, stating that this snowfall will cause power outage. Keep in mind, early season snowfalls like this have a tendency to cause added destruction because leaves are still on trees in many locations, creating an added stress and added chance of trees falling down onto wires. Check out the value-added service here. We're looking at the U.S. Doppler radar, and we see snow on there already. Let's zoom in. So it's already snowing in places in Montana and Wyoming, according to the Doppler radar here on Weather Underground. And here's the jet stream scenario that's driving that weather. Getting a massive injection of air coming straight down the coast of northern Canada, right across Washington, and it's going to make for some cold, cold days. Here's the animation of the jet streams in the western world. Talk about meridional flow. That is all over the place. Let's look at the east. And there's the eastern world. Jet streams. We can see double, tripled up jet streams going the wrong direction. I mean, it's hardly a jet stream in the northern hemisphere, but it's starting to reform as the polar vortex is on the way. Here's the U.S. water vapor map. That's the NASA GOES interactive weather satellite there. And we see a bunch of serious convective forces there around southern Mexico. And let's just zoom in on this convergence zone here over Colorado and Wyoming. And it looks like temperatures are going to continue to drop there, as you can see colder and colder air pushing its way down from Canada. Let me zoom out a little bit. Anyway, there's the water vapor map. Moving on. Are you prepared for wanton destruction? Well, September is prepping month, and we've been plugging David Dubine's book all month, Climate Revolution, authored by David Dubine and Bill and Richard Porter. Let's take an excerpt. Let's talk about ridiculous climate alarmism. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably don't believe that man has anything to do with climate change. Now, this is animal abuse, and frankly, this whole idea should be thrown in the garbage. This is one of the dumbest ideas ever. Methane is not particularly dangerous as a greenhouse gas. It's too reactive. As soon as it meets up with oxygen, which makes up like 18% of the atmosphere, by the way, it becomes a non-greenhouse gas, and it's another trace gas, and it's a ridiculous idea. Apparently, aliens are breeding with humans because of climate change, according to an Oxford professor. I wasn't aware. Check out the book, which we have linked below the video at oilseedcrops.org. We're only making one video today, I think, folks, so that we've now graduated to the "that is censored" and "that is a hole in the ground" portion of the video. Were you aware Google is a scam and not a verb? How about getting objective search results? How about using DuckDuckGo instead of Google? The world's primary manufacturer of junkware, making more junkware with more unqualified coders than any other company, Google also owns 60% of the servers on Earth, folks. And if you want to be shadow banned, or if you think you're being shadow banned, I've got one company to blame. That's Google. Let's talk about Google bricking Macs right after we talk about the soaring U.S. national debt. Actually, we won't talk about that. Let's just talk about Google bricking Macs. Blah, blah. Let's talk about me learning to speak the English language. Google bricking Macs. Yeah, that's right. They blamed it on Avid. And we covered this story a couple days ago, actually, about how Macs were bricking. Now, I'm not a fan of Apple. I refuse to use any Apple products, as Apple is a zombie company following Steve Jobs' death, and it's now just trying to come up with something relevant. Anyway, turns out a whole bunch of Macs got ruined, and guess what it was? It was a faulty Google Chrome update. What a surprise. By the way, we use Brave browser here, brave.com, a real browser, which will actually load pages more quickly instead of more slowly. And it won't track you like Google junkware known as Chrome. If you're using the Chrome browser, get off of that stuff. I mean, it's nothing like heroin, which is also junkware, by the way. Let's go back to space for a minute. TESS spots a star shredding black hole. Check out this animation. And according to the data, this is an artist's rendition of what happened. The star was torn apart, created a glowing disk around the, quote, black hole, end quote, and the tail of the star went flying off into space. What does this tell us about cosmology? Well, this event is called Assassin 19BT. It is an object associated with the Neil Gehrels Observatory. We're not going to look at the transients today. Let me read an excerpt. People have suggested multiple theories. Perhaps the light bounces through the newly created debris and loses energy. Or maybe the disk forms further from the black hole than we originally thought, and the light isn't so affected by the object's extreme gravity. We were not going to bring up lensing, at least gravitational lensing. Anyway, this is a very rare event. The galaxy is called 2MASX J07001137-6602251, another catchy name. Links to the article below the video. Let's check out a Newsweek article talking about a poll where 1,500 people were polled, and that's not very many, but showing Elizabeth Warren would beat Donald Trump if Warren faced Trump in the presidential election. Links to that article as well. Not a very representative sample with only 1,500 voters. And keep in mind, folks, Trump voters don't fill out polls. Moving on to a CNBC article, also about Liz. Now, I think in this photo, Joe is trying to sniff her hair, pretending to whisper in her ear, and she's wondering what kind of conditioner she used that day. Turns out that a lot of Democrat voters would sit out or back Trump if the Democrat Party nominates Liz Warren, as she's a bit anti-big business. And Wall Street's millionaires and billionaires don't take kindly to somebody coming in the way of their profits. The profits of the 1% are sufficient to run the entire universe for the rest of eternity if we just take all their money. Here's another article about a big planet around a small star, putting into question the way things form in cosmology. Is it gravitational accretion? No. Planets, stars, galaxies, and indeed clouds, and indeed you, all form on ionization pathways. Gravitational accretion is not the way things form in the universe. Gravity is just a little part of the way things work. Links to this article below the video also. So check that out, perhaps after you become our next patron. Please share our videos on social media, as we are as shadow banned as it gets. We're on Facebook, we're on Gab, Twitter, Minds.com, and recently on BitChute. Shout out to smAsho staff now on the payroll for uploading our videos directly to BitChute. That is a good thing. It's another place to archive our stuff because our YouTube channel could be deleted at any time for absolutely no reason. You know how it works. And if you enjoy the content here on YouTube, please like and subscribe, as we can't even get to 1,400 subscribers. So again, please share on your social media. Press like and subscribe, press the notification bell, and perhaps you can view the premiere with us live. Thanks Smash team for viewing the video and leaving comments and doing all that other good stuff that you do as the Smash team. We appreciate it. And welcome to the bonus section, folks. If you've stayed with me and listened to me bloviate all this time, cheers. We see this active region rising, and that's why we're looking at this view. This is probably going to be part of our thumbnail. We also see some little filamentary tornado activity going on there in the south. And that's about it, folks. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being spaced out. Visit the links in the below to support visit the links below the video. Support the channel. Click on the Hemp Lucid link if you're in the market for CBDs. Check out our Spaced Out campaign. Perhaps buy some CBDs. Help support the channel that way. Or perhaps purchase some original music. All linked below the video. Thanks again for tuning in. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.